Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Patrick, for that warm welcome. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me to come here and work with everybody today. It's really good to come together with 92 of my closest friends now. This is awesome. And let's do this formally. I'm Tom. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Tom.
See, now I go to other places and I get, hi, Tom, how are you? So that was awesome energy. Please keep that energy as you go through your days. I need to make 2.5 promises to all of you. 1, you will leave our session today with practical things that you can do to increase the accessibility of the interactions that you have with learners. I promise. This is not just a promise to faculty members, by the way. I met a lot of you during breakfast who are in student services, in the registrar's office, the folks who are doing grant programs, people who have outside agency representation. I even met the person who is representing Panopto, so awesome, right? It's all of us. Inside promise number 1 is we're going to bust a few myths together. And so this presentation is not for you. This presentation is actually for all of your colleagues who aren't in this room today. I want to turn you into secret, sneaky evangelists. Right? You go back to your meetings and your conversations and your coffee dates, and you say, you know, I made this one little change, and now my students don't ask me the same question 700 times in week 2. And then you just be quiet. And your colleague will say, what did you do? Can you teach me how to do that? Where can I get some of that mojo? And then you've got them. So I want to turn you into evangelists. That's promise number 1. Promise number 2, I am a huge nerd. And so you will see more bad Star Wars jokes in this presentation than you may have seen in quite some time. Some people are cheering and some people are going, oh God, no, I never saw any of the movies and I don't want to see any of the movies, and that's okay for 2 different reasons. 1, you are sitting next to a giant Star Wars nerd who will help you. And 2, it's just a metaphor. You're not going to need to know the movies in order to follow along. So, 2 promises for you, and let's get in the mood for a minute. Just let it wash over you. Wait for it. Okay, so a question. Do you recognize the music?
Yes.
If you had to cheat, could you name it?
Only sort of.
Only sort of. I have a comment. There, also, if you had to cheat, could you name it? Right? I'm trying to be as accessible in this presentation as well as I can. But this is the theme music written by John Williams in 1973 for the original Star Wars music. And it's not the theme, it's the Emperor's theme. It's the theme for the bad guys in the story. So why might we be starting a talk on universal design for learning, something everybody agrees is the right thing to do? Why would we be starting with the bad guys' music? Because that's what we remember. An excellent response.
Because it's scary.
Because it's scary. An excellent response.
Because we're doing things wrong and you're going to help us do it.
Because we're doing things wrong and I'm going to help you do things right. An excellent response. Incorrect, but excellent.
Because our new provost is here.
Because our new provost is here. Somebody said that out loud. Woo! I understand the vacuum cleaner for change is still a viable option, so okay. But seriously, I do want to start with the bad guys' music because I want to talk about a myth that lots of people believe. And to do that, I want to tell you a story. On the screen, you see a young lady in a watch cap, and her name is Katie. I worked with Katie when I was part of the Center for Teaching and Learning at Northeastern Illinois University in Chicago for many years. And here's how I came to know Katie. One of my colleagues taught junior and senior level education theory courses. These were the people who were teaching young teachers to go into K-12 teaching scenarios. And she came to me one day and she said, Tom, I have a student whom I know is cheating, but I can't figure out how. And I said, tell me more. And so she showed me one of Katie's papers that she had turned in at the beginning of the semester. And I read it, and I am an English professor by training, and I thought, this is kind of disjointed. It doesn't really have a clear topic or thesis. The writing rambles all over the place, and it doesn't really wrap up. And I thought, yeah, this student is struggling. Then my colleague showed me a paper that Katie had just turned in that week. Clear topic, details, evidence, examples lined up to support ideas. And I thought, this could be worth investigating, right? So I asked my colleague, well, did you run it through, turn it in? And she said, yes, it's the first thing you folks taught us to do, right? It comes back, mostly original. And I said, well, how about just taking some phrases that sound suspect and running it through Google? Oh yeah, we did that too. And before you ask, I also asked my colleagues if this sounds like any theorists or professional writers, and it doesn't. But she's got to be cheating, right? Can you help us? Now, what came out of my mouth was, yes, I will help you. What went through my mind, if this student has figured out a new way to cheat, and it can't be detected by ordinary means, and you detect it, oh, there'll be a book, you'll be famous, you'll get an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education, it'll be rock star time for you, yes! And what came out of my mouth? Yes, I'll help you. So first thing I did, I called Katie. And for those of you who don't know what this means, it's an old-fashioned telephone headset. Hi, Katie, my name is Tom. I work with faculty members here at the university, and your professor just showed me a paper that you wrote, and it's really well written. And I'd like to understand a little bit more about how you put that together. Can you tell me the story? Give them enough rope, and maybe they'll hang themselves. Right? Katie told me a very different story. She said that ever since she was a little girl, she wanted to be a teacher. When she was in high school, she got decent grades. Her teachers encouraged her to go into the education program at our university because we are known for our teacher training programs. And as a freshman and a sophomore, Katie was doing okay. But at the end of her sophomore year, something seemed to change. She started struggling with the amount of reading that she was being asked to do. The assignments started not making a lot of sense to her. Her grades slipped so much that she was on academic probation by the time I encountered her. She was a few failing grades away from being asked to leave the university program. In fact, she told me that one of her professors had quietly taken her aside and said, you know, Katie, maybe this program isn't right for you. You imagine how she felt, right? She then told me that she was desperate, and she went to my friends in the writing center. Now, the people at our writing center, two of them came from community colleges. I started my career at a community college in Pennsylvania, so I know the view from where you're sitting. And my colleagues in the writing center, they are not diagnosticians. They do not have a medical degree. They can't write a prescription. They can't say this person needs time and a half on a test or Xanax. But they figured something out. They figured out that when they said, okay, Katie, here's your professor's assignment. Please sit down at this keyboard and just off the cuff, write down how you would probably respond. Katie couldn't do it. When they said, okay, forget that. Just here's a pen and a piece of paper. Write out your thoughts. Katie couldn't do it. But when they said, forget that, let's just read this together out loud, and then you tell us how you might respond. Katie could do that. Some of you might be anticipating where I'm going here. My colleagues, who are not diagnosticians and can't write a prescription, they hooked Katie up with a piece of software. It's called, say it louder, Dragon, naturally speaking. You people are correct. And what that is, it's software where you take a headset and a microphone. You spend 20 or 30 minutes training the software to recognize your voice, your cadence, what you say. And then when you talk, it types. The shift in Katie's work was so dramatic, so fast, that her professors thought she was cheating. I never did get that article in the Chronicle. I never did get Rockstar famous. But I was very grateful to be able to play even a little part in Katie's story. Oh, what happened to Katie? Yeah, that's the important part. 5 years ago, she graduated cum laude, and she is now a 5th grade social studies teacher in the Schaumburg School District outside of Chicago. So, that's Katie's story. Awesome. I love that you're applauding. I noticed that many of you applauded when you heard Katie's story. How did Katie's story make you feel? What emotions came up there?
Proud of her.
This gentleman's proud of Katie.
I was frustrated that it took till she was in college for someone to figure out she had dysgraphia. Where was the help before?
So here's a colleague saying, it sounds like Katie has dysgraphia and it took her to junior year to figure that out. Where was the help that she needed before? Good question. What other emotions are there for you?
I felt sad, but knew that there was a good ending.
You felt sad, but knew there was good ending. That's actually trust in me, so thank you. So awesome, thanks. Yeah.
I love the fact that Katie, instead of giving up, she reached out to possible resources and found something that could work instead of just following what the instructor was telling her.
Instead of giving up, Katie actually reached out and found resources who could help her. Katie, by the way, is 1 out of every 20 students who have challenges like Katie's actually reach out. That's what the statistics tell us.
I just wish that students would go to the Writing Center before they're desperate, before they're failing.
I wish that students would go to the Writing Center before they're desperate, before they're failing. Oh, I hate to say it, but the Writing Center has a bad rep. It's where you go when you need remediation. Right?
I'm upset that the first assumption was that she's cheating instead of just she made remarkable progress somehow.
Our colleague Holly here is upset that the assumption was she's cheating instead of, hey, this is progress. Please.
Yeah, I was also upset that the instructor went to you instead of to Katie.
You're upset that the instructor came to me instead of to Katie. Yeah, I'm kind of upset about that too, but you know, it's part of the story. But that emotion is here for me. Here, here, and then here.
I really appreciated how you questioned her. You didn't say they think you're cheating, you asked for her story. And I really appreciated that.
Our colleague here appreciates that I didn't say, hey, Katie, someone thinks you're cheating. Tell me about that. But that I was open to hearing her story in a non-judgmental way, if I'm paraphrasing right. Over here and then coming down.
I'm sad that she had other professors telling her this isn't for you, encouraging her to basically quit. But glad that she found those who were ready to encourage her.
Our colleague here is sad that Katie was told by someone in authority, maybe you should quit. Yeah, and glad that she found a resource And down here too.
I was thinking about the risk of losing Katie and then the impact that she now has on her fifth grade class. Like, she was right on the cusp of not being able to stick around. And then she would have not impacted these kids with her own set of circumstances, how she might have impacted her fifth graders and helped that next round.
So there's risk there. We almost lost a good teacher because of, I'll say it, bureaucratic stuff. Yeah, and now we have Katie actually out there doing some good in the world.
Just flipping it a little bit, one of the things that I like about this story is actually that the faculty member used their resources in reaching out to you, rather than nailing the student, saying, oh, you're a plagiarist, I'm giving you a 0, or further encouraging her to drop out. So we have resources that we can use. As much as we encourage students to use them, we have resources we can use to help us out too.
So the faculty member used her resources in reaching out to me instead of going directly to the student. And faculty colleagues at all levels, we've got resources available when we get into situations where things aren't going the way that we thought they would go. Is that a good paraphrase? And are you okay with a high five? High five for that guy, because he just said, flip that around a little bit. Let's look at this from a different perspective. You'll notice that I asked if he was okay with a high five. One, that's because many people are not okay with a high five. I give you a fist bump in the air. I wave to you, but physical contact, that's a preference. So I always ask. 2, it cuts down on the amount of times that I have pepper spray pulled out unexpectedly against me. And 3, it was the best segue I could have asked for into the next piece, because I have to apologize to everyone. Because Katie is one of the reasons why accessibility and universal design for learning isn't more widespread in colleges and universities today. Because what did we do for Katie? We made one change, one time, for one person. It was terribly resource intensive. If we had to do for Katie for every other student we serve, there wouldn't be enough hours in the day, people, and money to throw at the challenge in order to be successful. What we did for Katie was we made an accommodation. I'm here to share with you something completely different. But when you go back to your own context and talk to your colleagues who are not here, when you say accessibility, they will think Katie. Here's how to get around that challenge. Universal design for learning is a concept that's been around since the early 1990s. It came to us from our colleagues at CAST, the Center for Applied Special Technology in Boston. Some of you know a bunch about this. Some of you don't. So, on the screen, you see the bad guy, Kylo Ren, in the new Star Wars movies, facing off against, spoiler alert, a hologram of the good guy from the original Star Wars movies, Luke Skywalker. So what do you know about universal design for learning? What's one thing, and this can be, I've heard the term, to I teach this in my classes, or anywhere in between. One thing. Please, Holly.
Universal design for learning is proactive, not reactive.
UDL is proactive and not reactive. Correct. Excellent response. And when I said one thing, I didn't mean one per audience. Keep them coming.
Well, it's creating accessible things so that you don't have to provide accommodation.
I like that. Can I give you the air high five on that one? It's creating accessible things so you don't have to do it one at a time through accommodation. I like that. What other things do you know, especially if you haven't had a chance to join our conversation yet?
I don't know anything about UDL.
That's worth a high five. Totally. I don't know anything about UDL. This session is totally for you. By the way, if you're keeping track, this side of the room, 12, this side of the room, 7. I have faith, though. You can pull it out. What's one thing you know? Please.
It's beneficial to all students.
It is beneficial to all students, and that's actually why Katie is a really bad example of UDL. It's not just our students with disability challenges. It's our students who have work and family responsibilities, our military deployed students, all of those folks who, for one reason or another, can't come to our Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. sorts of classes. It's why we hold night classes. It's why we do online and hybrid and blended and all different kinds of things. So yeah, okay, we've got a good baseline here. Let's actually dive in. Now, I'd like to do a thought experiment, and I'd like to ask, way up here in the back, I met an accounting professor a little while ago, and his name is Rick. Hello, Rick, how are you? Good to see you again. Rick is really nervous right now. But that's okay, because Rick gets to answer the first question, and then everybody else gets to answer the second question. Rick, for all the marbles, here's the first question. If I'm a student in your class, and I come to you at the end of week 2, and I have a piece of paper from the Disability Support Office that says I need time and a half on my test, I also need a human being there in case I have questions about the wording on the test, that kind of stuff, and I hand it to Rick. Rick, what should you say?
Not too much, I just do it.
His answer, not too much, I should just do it. Is this the correct answer? That didn't sound like a rousing yes, but
Well, I wouldn't try to explore it with the student if it's personal.
I wouldn't try to explore it with the student if it's personal.
Implement it, I talk to them about the course, and in some cases, the accommodations are already there.
Mhm.
They may not really understand that.
And Rick also says, in some cases, the accommodations are already there. I've already built them in. Ooh, Rick is like totally UDL. I picked the right guy. Awesome. Thank you, Rick, for the first question. Rick is totally off the hook, and he's also a good sport. The second question. Let's not imagine Professor Rick anymore. Let us imagine our colleagues generally. How might our colleagues actually feel when they get that piece of paper? Oh crap, oh crap, oh, groan. More work for me, I heard. Keep them coming.
I get frustrated because they all say the same thing and I don't feel like they really help the students.
So the accommodations are all kind of boilerplate and they're all the same thing and they're not individualized to the student. Ooh. How might they actually feel?
Oppressed and burdened.
Oh, pressed and burdened. This is more work for me that I didn't see coming, by the way. That's true.
Nervous that they might mess up or do something wrong on one of those.
This is a legal issue and I don't know how to deal with it or respond to it without getting into trouble. That makes me nervous. Did I add to that in a good way? Okay, cool.
I got a bad feeling about this.
What you hear is Han Solo, played by Harrison Ford, the real hero of the Star Wars movie in my book. Some people disagree with that, and that's okay. I told you I was among my people. We can have this conversation. On the screen, you see him. He's the notorious ruffian. All of my women friends who are about my age had a crush on him in younger years, and maybe even today. One of my women friends had a crush on Chewbacca, who is also here, the Wookiee, the giant guy from another planet who's covered in hair and sounds like this, right? But the audio is, I've got a bad fit. For those people in the back, would you say that again?
We want to hear it again.
I swear I had no idea that the Sasquatch was your mascot. So, the idea that we're talking about here, though, is those emotions, those feelings, when we learn anything, whether we are 6 years old or 60, we learn through our emotions first. It doesn't matter if you're teaching welding, nursing, art history, biology. There is an emotional connection first. pipe breaks under your kitchen sink. You have to fix it. The emotion is, oh crap, something is wrong. Right? You're trying to figure out how to pay for your own child's college education. The emotion is, I really want to, well, someone said, oh crap again. The emotion is, I really want to support this young person of mine, and how do I do it? So there's some nervousness there. The emotions always come first, regardless. So let's give everybody credit. When students come to us with that piece of paper, the emotions might be negative. In fact, they often are. We have 35 years of research that shows when faculty colleagues are telling the truth on anonymous responses, it's almost always a negative response. Give us credit, though, we almost never say that out loud to the students. And if you have one of your colleagues who does say that out loud to the students, pay attention to that person.
Trust your feelings.
In other words, we should listen to Obi-Wan Kenobi, the wise old counselor. Here on the screen is the hero, Luke Skywalker, and he is training to use the Force, that mysterious, ineffable, unnameable thing that pushes things toward a predetermined, predestined conclusion. By the way, I don't call it the Force, I call it really bad script writing, but I'm a fan. I didn't hear this one, but I'm mad. This is more work for me. This is a challenge that I have to go through. By the way, that's Darth Vader. That's the bad guy whose theme music we were hearing earlier. And he's fighting against the good guy with their laser swords, the lightsabers. So if it's an emotional thing, and when you go back and to everybody else who's not in this room, they're going to react with their emotions first. How do we make a case for being inclusive? And we're going to get into the practical stuff in just a minute, but how do we make that case?
No different, only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
In other words, listen to Yoda, we should. You thought that Chewbacca was bad. Yoda, the even older, even wiser counselor. Small, green, walks around with a cane. Disability, right? No, he could kick your butt in a fight. And he's telling the hero that he must unlearn what you have learned. What he means is, we all believe a few myths. Let's do some myth busting.
I've placed information vital to the survival of the rebellion into the memory systems of the SAR-2 unit.
Very first movie, here's Carrie Fisher. We lost her a couple of years ago. Playing Princess Leia, the heroine. She eventually becomes a general in the Resistance. And tiny little plot point. The bad guys are about to board her ship. She has some stolen plans for the bad guy's secret weapon, and she needs to get rid of them and send them to Obi-Wan Kenobi, wise old counselor. So she puts some robots into an escape pod, and they off to another planet. Just by happenstance, it happens to go in the right place and get to the right guy. That's the Force, right? Bad script writing. And here's what I don't get and what gives me the chills. This movie was released in 1977. Princess Leia is taking the plans for the bad guy's secret weapon and putting them into the robot. Those plans are on a compact disc, which won't be invented until 1983. George Lucas, futurist or just lucky? Okay. It was the Force, yes.
He had help from Paul.
He had help from whom?
Paul.
Paul.
Paul. You're going to have to Google that one.
Oh my God, you're right. Oh, we have total nerds in the audience. This is awesome. Okay, but back on track, back on track. If Princess Leia can put the information that she needs desperately to get to someone else into a droid, which is what the robots are called, we can also put that information into our droids. Thank you, Motorola, for naming the phone that. And it will get to the people who need it. Now, there was a recent study from Oregon State University, Katie Linder and her team, did a study of students' preferences for what devices they prefer to use when they're studying or engaging with new ideas. Which one came out on top? You're wrong. It's the laptop. Students do not prefer to use their mobile devices, yet. Students, by and large, don't own desktop computers and laptops. We all work with students who have very limited access to the internet. Almost all of them have phones, but sometimes the internet access is at Starbucks or at McDonald's. Say again? Which costs money. So they're limited by the technology, they're limited by physical distance, and they're limited by economics. But we're really only talking about 20 minutes out of every day. And I just turned on the flashlight. Unflick, there we go. We're really only talking about 20 minutes out of every day. What do I mean by that? Imagine there's a single dad who's taking courses at one of our campuses. He lives in Coeur d'Alene. He has to drive in, drop his daughter off at school, and then he has to drive all the way back into North Country where his job is. That's 45 minutes of driving every day, every morning, every afternoon. He's not studying during those 45 minutes. Imagine, though, if the readings for your class, imagine if you're a student support services person, if the guidance on how to fill out the financial aid forms were in a format that he could download one of the free Read It Out Loud to Me apps from the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, the iTunes Store. And then he can just have that play through his car speakers. Hook in the physical jack or have it go by Bluetooth. He's just found more time for studying that he didn't have before. Think about those 20 minutes. Can you give somebody access for 20 minutes that they didn't have before? That's really the first challenge of universal design for learning. Let's get into the practical how-to now. Let's just say that in the Star Wars movies, they had cell phones, right? Here's how you ruin a movie in like 5 minutes. Ring, ring, ring. Hello, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh yes, Princess Leia. You have the what? Really? Would you send them to me? Ding, ding, ding. Thank you. End of movie. Right? We wouldn't have a 30-year saga. The bad guys would be done and toast. Right? How to ruin a horror movie. Ooh, this house is really spooky. What should we do? We should go down in the basement. Heck no, I'm calling an Uber right now. End of movie. Take any of your favorite films and give the characters cell phones. Even in the modern era, people don't seem to have phones. And they can use them to go get help and advice and stuff. So if you want to be kitschy and you're a giant nerd, follow along with the metaphor and help. What's one way that Leia could reach out to Obi-Wan on his mobile device? Or if you'd like to just think about it in an educational setting, what's one way we can reach out to our students on their mobile devices? Think about those 20 minutes. What's one way we could do it? Or what's one way you are doing it now?
Podcasting.
Podcasting. How do you use those?
You can do an actual short little lecture on it, or you can even have books read on it, and you can send it out to them.
So doing your 2 or 3 minute lecture on hard topics, awesome. That's extremely UDL. If you have more than one way to get that information, if it's the video podcast and the text transcript, which you were already using because you wrote it as a script, awesome. What's another way we can reach out? Think about your own learners with whom you interact on a regular basis. Text messaging, that's awesome. You give your students your cell phone number. Now here's where we get to the meat of it, right? Sending out text messages. We do actually have lots of data from Pearson. And they did a study, the latest data are from 2015. They do the study every 2 years. And they just released the 2015 data. How long does it take for 80% of your students to see an email message that you send to all of them to their .edu email address? How long does it take for 80% of your students to see that email? 48 hours, 8 months, somewhere in between. I heard 3 days. I heard a never, which is actually kind of close. It's between 4 and 5 days. All right? And that's for just 80% of your folks. How long does it take for 80% of your learners to see the announcement you post in the Canvas shell for your interactions? Never. Someone's going never, but that's not right. A week, 2 weeks. Right away, today's 2 hours. Depends, okay, it depends is the correct answer for all these questions. But on average, it takes between 1 and 2 days. People have to remember to log in, and then they see the stuff. Or turn on notifications, and that's exactly where we're going. So our colleague who said send your folks a text message, everything that is opt-in means that you might not reach everybody. So adopt a tool like Remind 101. It's a free service. You give it your cell phone number. It creates a unique code for your class. You give your students the code, they go to Remind 101, give it their cell phone number, and enter the code. You never see their numbers, they never see yours. But you now have an instant blast way to communicate with your students. Pearson also has numbers on text messages. How long before 80% of your students open up and read those text messages?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, 10 seconds. This is a long way from 8 months, isn't it? Yeah. 17 minutes. 17 minutes on average. So I love the way that you folks are thinking about how we can reach out to our students on their mobile devices, especially for those folks for whom access is limited. Not everybody has steady access or the latest phone.
All of it.
I love that Millennium Falcon speeding away sound, the spaceship at the end. On your screen, you see the new heroes, Finn and Rey, of the reboot Star Wars movies, which are exactly the same plots as the originals, but no one seems to notice this. Okay, a few people seem to notice this. And they're talking with Han Solo from the original movies, and he's saying, you know, I thought the Force was a bunch of hooey until I actually saw it happening. And their response is, gee, that's great, right? So for those of you like me who don't want to take anything on faith, who want evidence-based practices, and you don't want to try anything out that hasn't already been tested, UDL has totally been tested and researched. In your packets, you have 2 handouts. One of them has a whole bunch of how to do it in the next 20 minutes, in the next 20 days, in the next 20 months, sort of things. I'm going to do something dangerous and tell you, please don't read that until after we're done. Yeah, I said that to a room full of academics. You're going to start reading, it's okay. The other handout has some questions on it. We're not going to go through these together, but I'd like it if you could answer at least one of them today. So I'm going to give you the textbook definition of universal design for learning while you take a look at those questions here as well. Up on the screen, universal design for learning just means that we are providing our learners with multiple means of, multiple ways. That's the phrase that isn't on the screen. Multiple ways of keeping people engaged in the learning experience. This is giving them real-world case scenarios to work on. This is being okay with silence during class time so students have time to think and respond. This is being all right with some students writing down notes and others not. Some students will be doodling in the back in their notebooks, or they might be looking at Facebook for 5 minutes, and I tell you what, I am not the Facebook police. Say more. I heard grumbling going on there.
No, we don't have time to be Facebook police.
We don't have time to be Facebook police. Totally, totally true. And it also creates an us versus them mentality. I want to be as welcoming to my students as I possibly can. Multiple ways of representing information. That's what a lot of the sessions that you're going to go to during our academy are all about. How do you make your syllabus more accessible? How do you make your PowerPoint slides more accessible? How do you make the audio files and videos that you create more accessible for your learners? And we're going to talk a little about this, but you're going to get more in the sessions as we go. And the last part is the most effective and the one with the greatest impact, and it's the one that we don't dig in on at all. Multiple ways of showing action, skill, and choice. I don't know about you, but when I used to assign the 5-page paper, that meant that I would have to grade 40 5-page papers. Now, the first few were great. Oh, yeah, the great in-depth feedback. This is good. This is what you should stop. This is what you should continue doing. By the time I'm on paper number 23, yeah, fix this everywhere else. I'm just going to mark the first time. This is pretty good. Okay. And then by like paper number 36, do I have a bottle of scotch anywhere in the office? Right? I think there's a policy against that, but I could be wrong. So I give my students multiple ways to show me what they know. Hey students, in my Spanish class, I was talking with our colleague here. In my Spanish class, write me the essay that summarizes some world events because you read it in La Prensa or in another newspaper from another country, or take your selfie camera on your phone out and put it to good use and pretend that you are a news reporter and tell me en español what you want to say. Can I grade both of those? Can I give feedback on both of those in a similar way? Are you using the language structures correctly? Are you moving from thought to thought in a connected fashion? Are you able to express yourself clearly? I can grade both of those using the same criteria, and that's what good UDL is all about. Giving people options in how they demonstrate their skills, and then being okay if everybody goes for option A or everybody goes for option B. Here we go. What I just told you, please do not let it leave this room. This is secret knowledge. All of those 3 things, they correspond to 3 different chemical pathways in your brain when you learn anything. You have to have a why, a what, and a how. You have to activate the acetylcholine uptake pathways through the hippocampus. You have to take the norepinephrine through the amygdala, and then you have to get the neurons to fire in an axonal chain in order to encode memory. We're not going to go anywhere in depth like that ever again, so don't worry about it. In fact, these 3 bits, the how, the what, and the why, if you tell your colleagues that UDL is really just +1 thinking, they will get the gist. They will understand. Think about the interactions that you have with learners right now. If there's one way that that happens now, give them one more way. That's it. Now, is that all of UDL? No, but it's a wonderful place to start. And you know, using the mobile device frame is really nice. On your screen, you see a man and a woman, a couple who won a contest and got to go down to Universal Studios in Orlando at the big Star Wars theme park there. And they got to do a lightsaber battle with the villain Darth Vader, and the woman is engaging in battle with the bad guys. The man is on his phone. But reaching out to folks who are mobile learners is one way to think about UDL. Do you need to have technology in order to do universal design for learning? You do not. Excuse me, do not, you do. Universal Design for Learning actually started in the face-to-face classroom. It's all about giving people options and choices so that they feel like they have some control over the interactions that they are engaging in with you. Do it my way or not at all means those people who can do it that way will be good at it, and the people who struggle with it, have questions about it, are confused about it, don't really have another avenue to go down. So just thinking about more than one way to keep people involved and engaged, more than one way to give them the same kind of information. This is putting captions on videos and making transcripts of our podcast. And giving them options for how they demonstrate the skills. In Rick's accounting class, he could ask students to work through numerical problems or write out a problem or rewrite it as a story problem and then solve it using what they've rewritten. Gesundheit. So, yes, the mobile frame is a good one, but it's not a necessary one. All of us who are teaching in the face-to-face classroom, these things work for us as well. And that was the bad guy's spaceship, zooming through space to come and get you, even though space is a vacuum and we shouldn't hear a sound. On the left is a young man named Luke Armstrong. Yes, his parents named him that for a reason. He is dressed up as the bad guy. He uses a wheelchair to get around. He and his parents built a TIE fighter spaceship costume for Halloween. His parents dressed up as Revolutionary Guards, Imperial Guards, pardon me. Dude was about to correct me. As Imperial Guards, and they won the costume contest at Disney that year. Over here we have Ryan Miller from Colorado. He gets around in a wheelchair. He and his father built a snow speeder spaceship costume for him. He's dressed up as the hero in his Colorado neighborhood. One Halloween, 2015, yep. He collected 800 pounds of Halloween candy. And then sold it and donated the money to charity. I will never be as good as this kid. But your colleagues are going to say, well, wait a minute, isn't it just for people with disabilities? No. It's for, if you take away nothing else, inclusive design practices help our learners reduce barriers of all kinds. And our biggest barrier is no longer distance. It used to be that rural learners and folks who just lived far enough away from campus were shut out of education. Distance is no longer our challenge. It is the clock. It's time.
You said comlink. Oh my, I forgot it.
And so when you talk about UDL, do what I do. I no longer talk about accessibility. I chop the end of the word off and I talk just about access. You'll have colleagues who say, why would I do all that work? Because this, frankly, is effort. Why would I do all that work when it's just going to have an impact on the two students, one of whom has a cane and one has a guide dog? You've heard? You all right? Meant to do it. Awesome. It's a stunt. But you know, you do have those colleagues who still think that the only people with learning barriers are the ones that they can see, right? Help bust those myths. And when we talk about access, oh yeah, I do want all my students to have access. How many of you have heard complaints from your colleagues? Now this wasn't you, but how many of you have heard complaints from your colleagues saying, my students don't do the readings that I ask them to do. They don't come prepared. How can I have a real conversation with them if they're not ready? Okay. I heard very quietly, and I'm not going to look anywhere in particular, but I heard, I do that every day. One of the things that Access does is it gives your students that 20 more minutes. More of your students will do the readings. More of your students will be prepared. You want to know the real specific how-tos now? Yeah? All right.
I would rather watch Star Wars.
I would rather go home and watch Star Wars. I would actually too, but we're here under contract, so we're going to pull it out. All right. I talked with Sam Johnston. She is one of the neuroscientists at CAST who came up with the idea of UDL. And she told me a couple of years ago something that makes me break a presenter's rule, and I'm actually going to read something off the screen. She said, we want a situation that is good for everybody. Part of it is thinking about what has to happen at the level of design that makes accommodation less necessary. Remember Katie? Katie was accommodation. One change, one time, one person. UDL is making changes ahead of time, expecting that our students are going to be variable in how they approach learning, in how much preparation they've had, where they start from, and where they will end up, and being okay with that. Also, when we talk about design, these are things that we do before the first day of class ever gets there. These are things that we do before people start lining up at the registrar's office, before they come to our counseling sessions, to make it easier for people to have choices about how they interact with us, with the materials, with each other, and with the wider world. Here we go. 5 strategies. If you remember nothing else, take away these. The first one, this one's the easy one, start with text. If you have a script, if you have notes, if you have, heaven forbid, PowerPoint slides with bullets on them, please throw out your PowerPoint slides with bullets on them. They are notes for you, they're not study aids for your students. But if you have a script, if you have an outline, if you have some notes that you work from, you automatically have a +1 alternative when you make different things. Our colleague Terry here talked about doing podcasts. Where do you get those podcasts, right? Do you just say them out of your brain? It's useful to write down just an outline or a sketch of what you want to say, and then share that with your students. More than one way to get the information, and it's okay if they look just at the text, and it's okay if they listen just to the audio. They're getting the same information. So start with text. Number 2, make some alternatives. Up on your screen, you see a professor in her chemistry lab. She's seated at a computer, and on the screen is a journal article that she's just had published in a prestigious journal. There are 2 students in the room with her. One of them is turning to us and giving a thumbs up. Oh, by the way, another good accessibility thing, describe what's on the screen. He's giving us a thumbs up because he knows that we can take the PDF of that journal article and put it into Canvas, and people can download that free reader program and have that PDF read out to them aloud. And a lot of those reader apps are people's PhD dissertation projects. There's lots of free stuff out there for you. And when you implement Blackboard Ally coming up later on, you will have the capability, and your students will as well, that if you put a PDF in there, Ally will allow students to say, give this to me and read it out loud. Click a button. Give this to me as interactive Braille. Give this to me as a text-only file. And it'll do the conversions for your students right there. 13 different formats. Does that mean we've checked the box on accessibility? Good tool, but not the whole thing. There's also another student in the room. He's got a video camera over his shoulder. He's pointing it at the faculty member, and he's making multimedia. And behind him with some dotted lines is a still camera. For those of you under the age of 18, a still camera is a separate thing that takes pictures that's not your phone. And he knows that we can take still images out of that video, put them into a Word file, and then put text that explains the major parts of what people will need to know. Someone will say to you, isn't that dumbing it down? Isn't that hand-holding for the learners? And the answer is, yes it is, if you're doing it wrong. Taking salient points, taking the main ideas, taking the things you want people actually to remember and highlighting them actually helps with recall. Iterative practice, spaced practice. You've heard about some of these topics. This is part of it. So strategy 1 was start with text. 2, make some alternatives. 3, let them do it their way. This is the part that is not usually examined by a lot of folks. But you see the standard 3-page essay, the effect of chocolate and cocoa flavonoids on plasma lipids and lipoproteins associated with cardiovascular disease. My non-nursing people will understand that that means,
Chocolate is good for you.
dang, you got it. Nobody gets this. Are you really the nursing people? Awesome. Chocolate, dark chocolate especially, is good for your heart. In moderation, apparently, I don't know. There's also some podcasts up here. There's also a student who has taken the camera on her phone and put it to good use. All of these are equivalent because we can grade them in the same way. Big asterisk for this one. If the format is the assignment, don't give your students choices. I teach English composition. You all know APA format. Cover page, 1.25" margins, Times New Roman, 12-point font, double-spaced, put a header, put the title. You have to indent, and it can't be hitting the space bar 5 times. You have to actually use the features in Word to indent it. I'm very sorry if that was traumatic for anyone. But APA format, right? Can I tell if someone has 1.5" margins in their video response to my essay assignment? No. So where do I offer my students the choices? When they're drafting. If you're drafting a paragraph and I want to make sure you have a main idea and can support it with details, evidence, and examples, yeah, I can assess that in a written format or in a little video where you talk it through. All the while knowing the final thing is only one format. Those of you who teach in programs where there are licensing exams have this very challenge because you don't take the licensing exam by speaking it out loud. It's pen and paper and bubble sheets. So if the format is the assessment, it's okay not to provide choices for that thing, but work those choices in wherever you can. Strategy 1, start with text. What was 2? Make alternatives. 3, let them do it their way. Strategy 4, go step by step. Here's a quick question for you. By show of hands, and it's okay if you don't participate, but how many of you learned to drive a car from a friend or family member? Lots. Awesome. You are totally excused from this next thought exercise. Also, get on the road to go home before I do today. That means the rest of you probably took driver's education in school or went to a professional company for driver's education. Where did they tell you to put your hands on the steering wheel for maximum control of the car? 10 and 2. That was unanimous. That's awesome. No one said 6 o'clock and one hand out the window, which I got when I present in New Jersey, everybody says that. But yeah, 10 and 2. If you imagine that the steering wheel is the face of a clock, for those of you under the age of 18, a clock is a round thing with 2 sticks that helps you tell time. You put your hands up at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock near the top. They don't tell our drivers learning students that anymore, though, do they? Those of you who have teenagers, what do they tell them? 4 and 8. That's a little New Jersey here. I heard it over here. 9 and 3 at the sides of the wheel. Anybody know why? Airbags is right. Public safety tip. If you're driving along and you have your hands at 10 and 2 and the airbag deploys, it will push your wrists toward each other and you'll break your wrists a split second before they hit your forehead and you give yourself a concussion. If you have your hands at 9 and 3 and the airbag deploys, it will push your arms away from your body and maybe you'll get a little bruise on your shoulder. Public safety driving tip, thank you very much. I don't know who's clapping for public safety, but you are much more public-minded than I am. Why am I talking about driver's ed? 10 and 2 is now an outmoded concept in driver's education. But 10 and 2 is an awesome concept when you are thinking about how to break up the pace and flow of your learning interactions. And this is good for those of you in the registrar's office too. If you're giving information for 10 minutes, make sure that for 2 minutes you take a break and ask people to do something. Take an action. Here's a neuroscience tip. It actually doesn't matter whether the 2 minutes is connected in any way to the 10 minutes. You could teach a concept for 10 minutes, lecture for 10 minutes, and then ask people, name one thing about their experience, like we've done. You could lecture for 10 minutes and then ask people to go take a look at the worksheets and check those out for a couple of minutes, like we've done. You could lecture for 10 minutes and then ask people to share their really corny jokes about Star Wars, which we've done a lot. Okay. You could ask your students for 2 minutes to go check Facebook and Instagram and come back after 2 minutes. Actually, never do that. They won't come back. But you see up on the screen, watch an introductory video for 3 minutes, read a case study, and then go into Canvas and post your response about the case study. Read an article, watch a video, listen to the lecture, and then go out and do a scavenger hunt and find some examples and bring them back for us. Anything that gets your brain away from taking in information and taking an action, because it is the act of pausing, the act of taking a break that actually starts all three of those chemical processes toward completion. If you're talking about the acetylcholine uptake pathway in the hippocampus, if you're talking about the norepinephrine down cycle through the amygdala, and so on, taking a break is where that actually starts. When your attention is somewhere else, that's when you usually have an idea about a third thing, right? They used to call it the singing in the shower effect. That when you're thinking about, like, how am I going to cook what I'm cooking for dinner, that suddenly you understand what you need to write in that essay you're writing. So strategy 1, start with text. Strategy 2, make some alternatives. What was 3? Let them do it their way. Go step by step and set content free. I mean this in 2 different ways. Set it free from format requirements. Where are my math people in the house? Awesome. My math people in the house, they're a special breed unto themselves because they have software that's written just for them. Wolfram Alpha, SPSS for statistics, R. Who names a software 1 letter? R, right? But they've got it. And none of us know what those things do. But if you post an example in that software format into Canvas for your students to look at, that means that in order to study with it, they have to have that program installed on the device they're using. And if they're on their mobile devices, they make Microsoft Office for your phone now, but they sure as heck don't make some of the specialized software that most of us use. So if you are using specialized software, or even if you're using Excel or PowerPoint, use a screen reader program like Screencast-O-Matic, one of our sponsors. And plug, okay, Patrick just gave me the thumbs up, so we're good. So use a screen recording software like Screencast-O-Matic, open up your special software, talk into the microphone that's in your laptop, and walk your students through a problem, then post that up into your video hosting area, or post that up into Canvas. And that way, the only program your students need is a video viewer. So set content free from format requirements and set it free from the clock. Remember those Pearson studies we talked about? They looked at Blackboard, Canvas, D2L, Sakai, Moodle, and a couple other learning management systems across the United States and Canada. And they determined for over 3,000 colleges and universities, on average, what are the times of day in the 24 hours where our students are most active in the LMS? Someone said 10 and 2, and I'm really grateful, but that's not right. 11 p.m.? I hear 11 p.m. Can I get a higher number than that? Yeah. Your guesses are all coalescing around late night, and you're right. It's between 11:30 a.m. and 1 p.m., so lunchtime, local time, and then between 1 and 3 a.m. Our students burn the midnight oil. This is especially true at community colleges. Our students have work and family responsibilities. They're working swing shifts. They have other responsibilities outside of those and school. So they are shoehorning their study time in wherever they can do it. I don't know about you, but I am mostly asleep 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. And I don't want my students contacting me to say, hey, professor, what about this question? So the more that I can give information, give them access to motivation, give them access to study problems that they can work through, see over and over, play again and again, I'm being more inclusive, I'm actually solving a problem for myself, and I'm giving students more time for studying when they actually have it. So those are the big 5 things that I'd like you to try out. This is the 20 minutes part in that handout that you can take away from our time together. And I know we're wrapping up here in about 10 minutes, and we'll give you some time before the next sessions go. But remember I said earlier, don't train just the faculty in Universal Design for Learning? I know that you have a faculty union, a bargaining unit here. This is something that you should demand of the administration. You're already working together to help reach out to your learners. This should be something where if a faculty colleague wants to do inclusive design, there should be a team of people to help that person. Maybe not in every single instance, and maybe not at the level of every single assignment. At the same time, this has to be a collaboration. I'm really grateful that your new provost is here, that your vice provost is here. I'm really grateful that your president is here, because they are committed to helping to bring better access to all of our students. Can I get real about the budget for a second?
Yeah.
Thank you for humoring me. One of our biggest challenges is do more with less. The opening video of Scrounging for Change to fund the eLearning Academy, it's humorous and it's the truth, right? When you only have so many hundreds of dollars for certain professional development things and so many people that go around to, we are all in straitened financial times. We have already, as a sector in community colleges, gone after adult learners rather than the traditional 18 to 19-year-old freshmen. We've already gone after college completion people who took some college but need to come back. We've already gone after the people who live within our service area but couldn't come to campus for one reason or another. There is one other population, and UDL really helps with that population. It's Katie. And to wrap things up, here's where Katie comes in really importantly. There's such a thing called the freshman cliff. If we bring in 2,000 freshmen, only about 1,400 of them will be sophomores. The 2 biggest reasons for that: financial challenges, time challenges, in that order. The financial challenges part, we have people working on that night and day. The time challenges part, we have a huge opportunity in front of us. You don't have to solve this one by yourself. You can take concrete steps individually to help make the colleges a more welcoming, more diverse, more inclusive, more open place. And that helps with the freshman cliff. Thank you for letting me get real for a minute there. Let me end with a little story. When I lived in Chicago, it was November. My wife and I were going grocery shopping. She continued on into the store. I stopped cold in the parking lot, and I took the photograph that you see on your screen. Since we're here in Spokane, when I go to the South, when I go to Atlanta and Charlottesville and those kinds of places, I have to explain what that is on the ground. Y'all know that slush, right? Okay. I don't have to explain that it's, a combination of squirrel spit and car exhaust and all nasty things and snow. But that's not why I took the photograph. This is one of a few photographs I will not describe for you. Can anyone tell me what's wrong with this picture? Just shout it out. Yep, I heard 17 correct answers and one very wrong one. The correct answers were, there is a shopping cart return in the parking space for disability access. So the accessible parking space has been blocked. Here's what happened. I took the photograph. I went on Twitter. Oh, you see it coming. Dear @name of grocery chain. This is @Thomas J. Tobin. I'm at your River Forest, Illinois location. All caps, not cool. Send. Here's the power of social media. 5 minutes later, 5 minutes. I hadn't even picked up my oranges and bananas yet. My phone, buzz, 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 in my pocket. It's a tweet from corporate. Dear @Thomas J. Tobin, indeed not cool. We're calling the store manager right now. Yes! Victory! I did a little dance there among the asparagus. I had made a difference in the world, one little piece, right? It's awesome. In fact, when I got back outside, I took another picture because there was somebody parked there. Now, before you say you don't see the little symbol on the license plate, we have hang tags in Illinois. I checked. And so this was awesome. But, oh, you're ruining my thing, man. Because I noticed that they had just moved the cart corral into the stripy part, so this person couldn't fully open their doors. So what's the lesson I want to leave with everybody?
Do a second
Send
tweet.
2 tweets.
Send 2 tweets is not correct. I love working with you folks. This is great. I'm getting all serious here, and you bring me right back from the brink. The lesson I want to impart is accessibility is about progress rather than perfection. We are probably never going to be 100% in compliance with all the accessibility laws. And I say this with great gravity. That's probably okay. Should we stop moving toward those goals because we know we're never going to get there? That's not okay. We should take little steps. You should commit to doing one thing. Try it out. Don't take my word for it that UDL actually works. Try it. Test it. Tell me I'm full of it. Tell me you found a different way to do it.
No more training you require. Already know you that which you need.
Now that you have Yoda's blessing, you can go and be my secret, sneaky evangelists. We're going to have a few minutes for Q&A, but I want to ask one last question. Instead of just, are there any questions? What's one thing that you're going to take away from our time today? One thing you're going to bring into the rest of the eLearning Academy? One question you might still have, but what's one thing you want to try? One thing you learned? Anything. One thing.
I lost a Katie, and that makes me sad, and I'm not going to lose any more Katie.
Our colleague lost a Katie at some point in her career, and she doesn't want to lose anymore. That's motivation. What's one thing?
I was going to say the breaking up of the 10 minutes of subbing, 2 minutes of a break.
10 and 2 as a way to break up information versus taking a break. Good takeaway. What's one thing?
It's not just about disability.
It's not just about disability or ability profiles. Yeah, it's about barriers of all kinds.
Word access.
The word access. Yeah, access actually gets you more traction than accessibility because people make that mental mistake when you say accessibility. But when you say access, they think, oh yeah, I have learners in that condition all over the place. One thing.
Free reading app.
Say again?
The reading app.
Oh yeah, if you go onto your iTunes store or your Google Play store, take a look at all the accessibility apps that help people who don't have any disability profile needs.
It's not just technological supports that we have, it truly comes back to a matter of our design before it all begins.
It's not technology where we start, it's how we design the learning interactions. That's an awesome, awesome note. And believe it or not, with that, this side of the room, 61. This side of the room, 61. We are tied, folks. Any other takeaways for me? Please? Star Wars rocks. Yeah, that is a good one. I love it.
Not everyone's going to have the technology, so be careful what you force them.
Not everyone's going to have the technology, so be alert to giving them options that don't require the technology. Awesome.
Progress is better than perfection.
Progress is better than perfection. An awesome note on which to end. If you happen to be on Twitter, I would love it if you would take a minute. Just say, I commit to #UDL. If you are on Twitter, search for that hashtag and you'll find lots of other cool stuff that you can learn quickly and in a few minutes. We are at CC of Spokane. I am at Thomas J. Tobin. I'm going to hang out here. We've got about 20 more minutes before the next sessions start up, I think. And I've got a couple of books if anybody would like to be interested in those. I brought them, not a required thing. I'd be happy to answer questions, pose for selfies. I've already done one, which is awesome. And thank you very much, and may the force be with you. Thank you.